Hello, my name is Iris Franz, and today we're going to talk about externality. So what is externality? Externality is that when you have consumption and production of a good that positively or negatively impact others. So if the externality is something good, then we call that positive externality. And when the externality is something bad, we call that negative externality. So when the production or consumption of a good or service impact bystanders, we have externality. So who is a bystander? A bystander is someone who is not the consumer nor the producer of the good or service. Yes, you're being impacted by the consumption or the production of the good and service. So typically we have two kinds of externalities. One is positive externality from consumption. The other one is negative externality from production of a good or service. So we start with positive externality from the consumption of a good. So think about how the consumption of a certain good or service can positively impact bystanders. So bystanders, they are not the consumer of that good, but they benefit from your consumption. And one very typical example is education. So think about this. Typically, when you get a college degree, then the degree doesn't just benefit you as a student, but it also benefits others. Why is that? Because after you graduate from college, you're going to have a good job, and you're going to have a higher income, and as a result, you're going to pay a higher income tax. So your tax money will also benefit others. And also, typically college graduates have a lower crime rate compared to, say, high school dropouts. The reason is this: once you are a college student, you graduate from college, then because you have a good job, so your opportunity cost of committing a crime, say stealing a car, will be a lot higher than those high school dropouts because your income is very high. So for you to not sit in front of your desk and work your high-paying job and to steal a car, that opportunity cost is very, very high. So you will not commit a crime like stealing a car. So when you are not stealing a car, that means you're not stealing my car. So I benefit from your education. So education is a very typical example of positive externality from consumption. And also think about vaccination. If you get the flu shot, then you don't get the flu. That means you don't pass on the germs to me, and therefore you don't make me sick. So your flu shot doesn't just benefit you, it also benefits me and those who are around you. So you can see how the consumption of a good can benefit bystanders. So now we're going to talk about how externality can cause the market outcome to become inefficient, meaning you're going to have deadweight loss. So education, you have your demand curve, and I'm going to call this private demand curve. This private demand curve reflects the value of education to you and yourself only. But then we just mentioned that education has a positive externality, meaning your education will benefit others, and therefore there will be a benefit to others, which needs to be added to the benefit to you. So we can take a look. So suppose the benefit to others is like this value. Then I'm going to draw a social demand curve that reflects the value of your education to the entire society. So watch, this is the value of education to you and yourself only, plus the value to bystanders. Then you get the value of your education to the entire society, and therefore we have two demand curves. One reflects the value of education to you and you only. So that's D. P stands for private demand curve. And the second demand curve reflects the value of education to the entire society, which includes the benefit of education to you plus the benefit to bystanders, and you get the value to the entire society. And now we're going to draw the supply curve. That's your supply curve. Now, when you're deciding how much education you're going to receive, you don't think about others. You don't say, I want to get education because I want to pay a higher tax to help others. No, you don't say that. You say, I want to get education because I want to have a good job myself. So when you are deciding how much education to receive, you look at your private demand curve that reflects the value of education to yourself only. And therefore, the market equilibrium is going to be at the intersection of your private demand curve and the supply curve. So the intersection is here. And I'm going to call that QE. E stands for equilibrium. So that's a market equilibrium quantity. But is that the best quantity to the entire society? No, not really. To see what is the best quantity to the entire society, you need to look at your social demand curve that reflects the value of education to the entire society. And therefore, you look at your social demand curve and the supply curve, you find the intersection, and that's another quantity. We call that QO. O stands for optimal, the best for the society. So why is that quantity, QE, not the best quantity? Because in order to see what's the best for the society, you really have to look at your social demand curve. So how do we focus on that? Watch. You can start to kind of erase the private demand curve in order to see the curve, the diagram more clearly, and see which demand curve you're looking at. So, oh, I'm looking at the social demand curve. So that's the best quantity. And I'm not consuming that. So where's the deadweight loss? So you look at your social demand curve. So that area will be the deadweight loss. So you can see our economic pie will be that big triangle minus the deadweight loss. So deadweight loss is like a piece of pie burned in the oven. So now your economic pie is not maximized. Inside of this big triangle is actually this trapezoid. So it's not maximized. So how can we solve this problem? We can have the government or the school, college giving you scholarship. So give you some incentive to get more education. So with that scholarship, now it's going to shift your demand curve to the right. So from DP, shifting to DS. So we're going to shift to the right. And therefore, your demand curve is now the same as DS, and you will consume more education. So previously, maybe if you had to pay for yourself, you would just get a degree from a junior college, maybe. But now with scholarship, you decided you're going to go to a 4-year college. So that will increase your equilibrium quantity and solve that deadweight loss problem. So that is positive externality from consumption. That would result in deadweight loss without government intervention, without actual incentive. But the government can give you scholarships or the school can give you scholarship to increase your demand. As a result, our outcome will be optimal. And next, I'm going to talk about negative externality from production of a good. So, negative externality from production. So, negative externality from production, the example is very typical, like pollution from the factory, or several years ago in California, there was a company, I think Hui Feng Foods, they produce sriracha sauce and make the air really spicy. And people had to move their activities from outside to inside. So that would be negative externality from the production of a good. So think about this. When there is negative externality from the production of a good, that means the production of that certain good negatively impact others. So you're adding some kind of cost to bystanders. For example, the sriracha sauce example, the residents living around that area, they had to move their activity from outside to inside, and they also suffer from some respiratory problems. They had to see a doctor, and they had to pay for a doctor visit. So that will be a cost to bystanders, and the factories are not paying for that cost. So let's take a look. So this will be the private supply curve of the factory, so they pay for that cost. Remember, supply curve reflects the cost of production. And now remember, because of negative externality, there is a cost to bystanders. So suppose that's the cost to the firm, and that's the actual cost to bystanders that the firm doesn't pay. Then you can draw a social supply curve that reflects the cost to the entire society, which includes the cost of production to the firm and the cost that bystanders have to bear, such as going to see a doctor because of air pollution. And the social supply curve will reflect the total cost to the entire society. Now let's look at the demand curve. That's a demand curve. Now suppose the firm is deciding how much to produce. They are not going to care about the cost that bystanders have to pay. They only look at their private cost. So that will be the equilibrium outcome. I call that QE. E stands for equilibrium. Now, is that the best quantity for the entire society? No. To see what's the best quantity for the entire society, you need to look at your social supply curve, which reflects the cost to the firm and the cost to the bystanders. So that will be the cost to the entire society. So we find the social supply curve and the demand curve, their intersection, call that QO. O stands for optimal. So now we're going to find where the deadweight loss is. So when you want to find the deadweight loss and what is the best for the entire society, you need to look at your social supply curve that reflects the cost to the entire society, which includes the cost to the firm and the cost to bystanders. So watch. Use an eraser, kind of erase the private supply curve so you know which one you're looking at. So now I know I'm looking at the social supply curve, which is the blue one right now. And I'm going to find the deadweight loss. So that's the best quantity. Where is the deadweight loss? So I'm producing too much. And the deadweight loss will be here, that triangle. So the size of your economic pie is going to be that big triangle minus that small triangle, and this is our deadweight loss. So how can the government correct this problem? When we have deadweight loss, remember, it's kind of like a piece of pie burned in the oven. So how can we fix this oven so that our pie will be maximized again? In the pollution example, we can have the government tax the factory or fine them. Or you can sell the pollution right. So whoever gets the pollution right can pollute the air. So in whatever way, we're trying to increase the cost of the firm that pollutes the air. Once the cost of the firm increase, that's going to shift the the supply curve of the firm to the left. And once you shift your supply curve to the left, to the social supply curve, then we're going to produce a quantity that is the best, optimal to the entire society. So that concludes our mini video. Good luck with your studying and see you next time.